Right. So let's go ahead and get to it. Let's talk about it. Whether you're a home buyer looking to finance or you're a home buyer looking to pay cash outright for the property that you want. Let's go through some of the information, right? And whether you want to buy a home or not, that's really it's going to be irrelevant to this conversation. I'll tell you why. Because the only thing that matters is that you do what you need to do based on the information that helps you support your decision. That is it. So I'm coming in on the backside of maybe information that you don't have, facts, right? So I'll never talk to you about anything that's a hypothetical. I'll never try to sell you on the future. It couldn't save Goldman Sachs. It couldn't save the 4.7, 5.7 million people who lost their homes. It absolutely couldn't. So for anybody to try to predict what the future looks like, whether it be me or another person out there who's analyzed it, it would be a huge error in judgment, right? So let's go ahead and talk about what the facts are. So now I'm studying what the real estate market did back in '08, 9, 10, all the way up to 11. We started to see a recovery in 12. So you're talking about some pretty hard times leading up to that. And really not even a full recovery until maybe around 16 or 17. So you're talking about maybe a decade of just turmoil. Now, let me paint a perfect picture for you. At the time, I remember my grandmother bought a house so that I could come home to it. This house was going into foreclosure. She was caught up in that. This was around 2007 and 8. She was caught up in that. I remember going to the mortgage place with her and talking about doing a reverse mortgage. I don't know how my grandmother managed it, but she kept her home. And she kept a home and a roof over my head for the time being until I moved out and got my own home. But I remember exactly what was going on at that time. I also remember the banking industry going down. At the time, I had like a $20,000 credit limit with Washington Mutual. Remember them? WAMU, right? Well, Washington Mutual was one of the first banks to start going down during the 2008 epicenter. And I remember I had a $5,000 debt on that $20,000 credit card. And I was in the process of buying a home. I was in the process of making some moves. And they closed my credit card and called my 5,000 due. Needless to say, I did not qualify for a home because one of my biggest trade lines had just been closed. And also I had a $5,000 debt that I now was called to take care of. So with all that said, I witnessed that firsthand. I witnessed it with my grandmother, and then I witnessed it personally. Lehman Brothers went down after almost 150 years in business. Lehman Brothers and hundreds of other banks went down in that '08 series. I remember in 2008, there was like 1.4 million foreclosures. 2009, there was 1.7 million. And then going all the way up to 2010, there was a million after that. So somewhere around between '08 and 10, there was somewhere around 5 million people who had actually went into foreclosure. So that is a pretty catastrophic situation, evident on all levels. I mean, you could be Stevie Wonder and see that one coming, right? Hundreds of banks went out. Well-established, long-term, long-running banks went out of business, closed their doors. Lehman Brothers. Goldman Sachs was suffering, right? Now we start looking at what was happening with the real estate industry. Over 5 million homes went into foreclosure. 5 million. My grandmother happened to be a big believer in God, so she was able to hold on to her. She fought. She fought really hard. I love that woman to this day. With all that said, that ends up being it's really the go-to when we start looking to see what the real estate market is. That is really the benchmark. That's the benchmark we look for in order to determine whether or not we're in that same ideal predicament, right? So let's fast forward. Now we have COVID. We have all this excess cash being pumped out into the economy because of what? They were trying to keep people stabilized. People were losing their job. Unemployment was super high, right? But even with all that said, the most amount of banks that we actually lost between 2019 and 2023 were maybe 100. Maybe. I don't even think we lost that many. but there were hundreds between 2008 and 2010. Now let's look at what happened with the foreclosure situation. Between 2019 and 2023, we may have seen a couple hundred. 2021, we've seen 53 foreclosures. 2023, 120. 2008, we seen 1.4 million. 2009, we seen 1.7 million homes. We haven't even seen a fraction of that go into foreclosure. What we have is we simply have sticker shock. That's what's going on right now. And that's good for you. And I'll tell you why. Because as long as the masses aren't coming out after the very limited inventory that we have, that means that there's still chances and opportunity for you to be able to put in a bid. Put it like this: what's the worst that you have to lose if you go out there into the market, whether you're looking to pay cash or if you go get pre-qualified through a lender and just put an offer in on something? What's the worst that can happen? You don't get it? What's the best case scenario? That you're able to secure a property that is very well worth more than what you paid for. Now, one thing that I do feel is going to be very true, and this is another fact: we have less inventory than we have at any other point in history. We probably have about 30 days. We usually like to have about 4 to 6 months worth of inventory to have a stable market. We have more buyers than we have sellers. We have new homes who have almost half amount of permits being issued this year that they did all of last year, which means they're not cranking out properties like they used to. So who are we counting on to make up that extra inventory? Sellers. And as long as interest rates are high, the sellers are sitting on the fence, the buyers are sitting on the fence. Meanwhile, I'm reminded of the movie Home Alone, specifically because when the robbers came and they thought Kevin was home alone, they tried to distract him by making him think they were coming through the front door. They tried to distract him, but Kevin was smart enough. He knew that they were coming through the back door, so he had a trap there too. You're being tricked to believe that it's a bad time to buy, that there's a real estate market crash, but there's not one single indicator showing that that's possible. Lack of inventory, home equity values are higher than ever. The 53 people that went into foreclosure during 2021 were probably deceased, to be completely honest. They had to have been completely deceased, because there was no way in 2021 where it was like cash for clunkers, push it, pull it in, however you got to get the car here, we'll give you top dollar for it. We were living in a cash for clunkers era where everything was selling for over $250,000. We no longer seen a $300,000 home in no part of the area, not Arizona City, not Eloy, Casa Grande, not in Mesa, not in Tempe, not in Scottsdale, not even in Tucson, Arizona. Everything was above market value. And so now opportunity presents itself. And you have to ask yourself, while everybody is waiting for this crash that's never going to happen, where do you think you can capitalize? I have an idea. You put your offer in. You negotiate the terms. You negotiate the terms. And you buy now. Because pretty soon, mark my words, the buyers will get antsy. And once they start making multiple offers on one home, other sellers will come onto the market and they will test it to see if they can get more money for their home. Because everybody is having FOMO. That is a homeowner that did not sell in 2021. You might ask me, what's FOMO? It's the fear of missing out again. But right now, you have 50% of the buyers on the fence scared of interest rates. Interest rates that historically have fluctuated. And you got sellers who think that if they sell, they're going to take on a higher, more expensive monthly balance. But you have homes on the market willing and able and ready to be sold. So now all you have to do is ask yourself, are you going to be a player? Or are you going to be a watcher? The game is being played. They already came out in USA Today and said that these big companies who hold billions of dollars in inventory have the intentions on turning the rest of the population into renters. So whether you own or occupy the property as a renter, or whether you run your business out of it as a renter, why don't you own your own property? Why don't you own your own commercial buildings? Why would you ever rent from anybody? Or why would you ever deny yourself what you want when the opportunity is prime right now? The fruit is ready to be picked. And now you know now's the time. It's just a conversation between me and you. What do you want to do? You know my number. Or you can be in FOMO. Again. Let's go.